time. I give the call to the member for Banks.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak on this legislation today, because this is a very important bill, Deputy Speaker, because this really goes to the whole question of how the government manages the people's money, and how we as a society place requirements on people who receive welfare benefits to do the right thing by that society who are paying the cost. And it's a really important issue, Deputy Speaker, because there's widespread support, of course, for helping people in genuine need, and I certainly support that, as does the government and the vast majority of Australians. But there's an equally important principle, which is that if you are getting benefits from the taxpayer, you should be doing the right thing by the taxpayer. The Australian people won't support a system, Deputy Speaker, where people who are abusing the system or people who are not taking their obligations seriously are putting their hand out and accepting a cheque without actually doing the right thing and trying their absolute best to get a job. And that's entirely understandable, and that's why we are making these changes. And Social Security, Deputy Speaker, is an enormous part of the federal budget. In fact, it's by far the largest expenditure item. So in the 2014-15 budget, Deputy Speaker, it's estimated there'll be about $415 billion of Commonwealth spending, but of that, about $55 billion is the GST payments that flow straight through to the state. So the effective amount that the Commonwealth effectively allocates is $360 billion. And of that 360, $146 billion is Social Security and welfare. And that's about 41% of that discretionary $360 billion that the Commonwealth has to spend. So this is an enormous amount of federal expenditure. Many important programs, of course, in the social security area, Deputy Speaker, but those numbers really do underscore how important it is that we manage this area very effectively, because we spend more than twice as much on social security as we do on health as a government, 5 times as much on social security as on education, and about 6 times as much on social security as we do on defence. So about 6 times as much. So an enormous area of expenditure, and therefore it is very important that we administer these programs in a sensible way. Within the social security area, we spend about $10 billion a year on job seeker income support in its various forms, and it's about 9 million households in Australia, Deputy Speaker. So that works out at roughly about $1,000 per household in terms of the cost of job seeker income support per year. So it's a lot of money, and we absolutely owe it to the people of Australia to manage this area effectively. So what the bill does, Deputy Speaker, is ensure that people who are not complying with the rules under which they receive benefits do suffer some consequence, and that sounds pretty obvious, Deputy Speaker. Obviously, if you don't face a consequence for inappropriate actions, then there's not much incentive to stop those actions. But of course, under the previous government, that's what happened, because there were an extraordinary amount of people who were in breach of the rules as they existed, but were then given the penalty that they should have paid or suffered effectively was waived time and time again. So in 2012-13, 68% of serious failures for refusing a job, 68% of the people in that category had any consequence or penalty waived, so suffered no consequence for refusing a job. And that doesn't make any sense at all, Deputy Speaker. Why have a system where one of mutual obligation, where in fact the obligation is only on one side. There were over 25,000 failures for non-compliance with the job seeker rules, Deputy Speaker. Most of those failures relate to not engaging with employment service providers as required under the Act, and basically not working hard enough at getting a job. But 73% of the time, almost 3 out of 4 times, the penalty was waived. So what sort of message does that send to a young person in particular who's receiving benefits and doesn't show up consistently for interviews or to see their job service provider, consistently doesn't show up, suffers no consequence? That just does not make any sense at all, Deputy Speaker, and that's why we are making these changes. So under the bill, job seekers who fail to accept or commence a suitable job will incur a mandatory 8-week non-payment period. So again, very simple principle. If there's a job for you and you don't accept it, then it's absolutely right that there should be a consequence. And if you are consistently non-compliant with the rules under which you receive your benefit, Deputy Speaker, then similarly you will face that 8-week suspension of your payment. And there is still the capacity for one waiver there if there are some exceptional circumstances, but as a general principle, you meet your obligations or you will face that 8-week non-payment period. And that's a very, very powerful incentive to job seekers to do the right thing by the taxpayer and do everything they can to try to get a job. And those measures will save about $20 million over 5 years. So it's a significant amount, Deputy Speaker, but as important as the amount of money involved is the principle of mutual obligation, the fact that if you are going to accept welfare, you've got to do your bit. You've got to put your hand up and get out there and try to find a job. Now, as I mentioned before, Deputy Speaker, the problem in this area was the lack of enforcement previously, and that created a scenario where people would just flout the rules, frankly, and that is what we will be putting an end to through this legislation. Now, the legislation is part of a broader package of measures which the government has introduced in this whole area of encouraging people to go from welfare into work, because we all benefit when that happens, Deputy Speaker. Obviously, the benefit primarily goes to the person who gets the job, but it's good for the economy to have people in jobs. It's good for our society to have people with the dignity and focus that work brings. So getting people out of a welfare situation and into work is absolutely critical. And three important areas where the government has taken measures in this space. One is the job commitment bonus. Now, this is a payment of $2,500 after 12 months of continuous employment and being off welfare for young people between 18 and 30, and a further $4,000 if they remain in continuous employment for another 12 months. So really powerful incentive. So on the one hand, Deputy Speaker, we want to make sure that people do the right thing, and including a difficult measure of removing their assistance for 8 weeks to encourage that, and on the other, some bonuses and incentives to further encourage people to get into work. Relocation assistance as well is important, Deputy Speaker. Of course, particularly in rural and regional Australia, jobs aren't always nearby, and the cost of moving to take a job and moving away from friends and family is a very significant impost, and so the government has moved to assist people who are relocating to take up a job with up to $6,000 available for people who relocate to a regional area. $3,000 for people who go from a metro area to a regional area. And an additional $3,000 in the case of people with families with children, Deputy Speaker, so up to $6,000. So really positive measures, Deputy Speaker, to encourage people to get back into the workforce. And another similar program is the Restart program. Now, this program will provide employers with a payment of $10,000 for taking people on who are over the age of 50. And I was recently at the Peakhurst Fruit Market in my own electorate, meeting with the owner, and he is very enthusiastic about this particular program, Deputy Speaker, because older workers, of course, have so much experience, so much expertise, tend to be very reliable, and this $10,000 incentive for hiring workers over the age of 50 is going to be a real godsend for small businesses and indeed large all around the country. So two sides to the coin, Deputy Speaker. On the one hand, we need to be very clear with people that are accepting social security benefits that they've got to put their hand up and do the hard work, and if they consistently fail to comply with the rules, there'll be a consequence. And on the other hand, we want to provide incentives to individuals and to businesses that are assisting in getting people from welfare and into work. And all of this is a huge contrast with the efforts of the previous government, or lack thereof, where we did see a failure to enforce the rules. And we saw a record on employment generally, Deputy Speaker, that is really quite appalling. And we talk so much in this place about the economy and big numbers and billions of dollars and so on. And at the end of the day, though, why does all that matter? Why do we care about the economic measures of the country? And the basic reason we care about it is because it means jobs. So economic growth means jobs, Deputy Speaker. But under the previous government, unemployment rose substantially from 4.4% in November 2007 when they came to office up to 5.7% in September 2013. So a very significant increase. And in manufacturing, where those opposite so proudly claim to be the friend of manufacturing workers, we actually lost 1 in 10 of every manufacturing job in the country under Labor. So in that 6-year period, 10% of all manufacturing jobs were lost, with 200,000 people more unemployed at the end of Labor's reign than at the beginning of it, which obviously is a very poor testament. So, Deputy Speaker, our initiatives in the welfare space will give people an incentive to get into work. They will require people to play by the rules, and we will also drive employment, Deputy Speaker, through good economic management, because there is no greater indicator of employment than economic growth. And how do you grow the economy, Deputy Speaker? Well, you manage the budget sensibly so that people know that they can have confidence in the financial future of the nation. You get free trade agreements, as we have with Korea and Japan, and working on one with China at the moment. You get silly red tape out of the way. You build things, Deputy Speaker. You build things like the WestConnex extension in my electorate and many other fantastic infrastructure projects right around the nation. And you also get the environmental approval process working effectively, as we are doing with the one-stop shop, and indeed even prior to Christmas last year with the approval of projects worth some $400 billion of economic activity. So that's what you've got to do, Deputy Speaker, a wide range of measures to grow the economy and a culture where the people of Australia know that their tax dollars are being used wisely. About 41% of all of the discretionary spending of the government is in social security and welfare. That money needs to be managed effectively, and that's what this legislation is about.
Order.